Hello, and welcome to this Arts Month community conversation. I'm Jonathan Toman with the Cultural Office of the Pikes Peak region, and tonight we're excited to bring you Independent Theater and Film, Crisis Management and Survival Tactics During a Pandemic. This is the third of 8 community conversations that will take place throughout the month of October, and the first within Theater and Film Week of Arts Month. These community conversations, curated by local artists and arts leaders, will showcase a variety of timely and relevant topics within various arts sectors of the Pikes Peak region. Tonight, as I mentioned, that topic is independent theater and film, crisis management and survival tactics during a pandemic. We've got a great moderator and group of panelists for this conversation. Joining me now is Ralph Giordano, Executive Director of Peak Film Forum, and tonight's moderator. Hi, Ralph. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jonathan. Very happy to be here.
Ralph Giordano has been involved with film and video production in Colorado Springs for over 30 years. And I lost my spot.
Well, you just said I'm old. Thank you. That really helps.
He writes, produces, and directs video productions ranging from commercials, training and marketing videos, to short independent films and videos. He currently, as I mentioned, is the Executive Director of Peak Film Forum, a nonprofit public networking group for local writers, producers, directors, and actors to promote film and video production in Colorado Springs. Well, Ralph will introduce the 3 panelists he assembled shortly, and those 4 will have complete creative control of the conversation moving forward. With that clarification made, I will get out of the way, and Ralph will take us away.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I'm so happy to be part of this panel discussion and to be moderating it for tonight. So let me go ahead and introduce my guests. First off, we have Emory John Collinson, who is a native of Colorado Springs, where he has been actively involved in the theater community for over 25 years, having performed at the Fine Arts Center, Star Bar, Theater Works, and Theater d'Art, and more in that time. He is a proud company member of the Springs Ensemble Theater, also known as SET. He has also served as SET's vice president for the past 4 years, where he has appeared in over a dozen shows, including Lonesome Hollow, for which he received nominations for Best Supporting Actor from both the Colorado Theater Guild and Broadway World. In addition to acting, Emory has designed sets, lights, and costumes. He has also played the role of director and producer. Emory's day gig is working as the Southern Colorado Regional Director for Rocky Mountain PBS. When not at work or on stage, Emory also enjoys photography and riding his bike. Welcome, Emory.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks, Ralph.
Thank you. Jamey Hastings is a director and editor who works in narrative, experimental, and documentary film. She's a graduate of the University of Denver with over 15 years of professional experience. Her films have been recognized locally and nationally. Clippings was the recipient of a Pikes Peak Arts Council Award, and I know that because I handed it to her. And a short documentary promoting Dragon Theater Productions received a Silver Addy from the American Ad Federation, Colorado Springs. Additionally, her documentary work earned her a Silver Telly Award for In Our Backyard, Reflections on the Waldo Canyon Fire, and a Heartland Emmy for Colorado Springs Beat, the news photography of Stan Payne. In 2018, her documentary, This Wall Connects Us All, screened at the Community Built Association Conference in Charleston, South Carolina. The film follows staff and volunteers with local arts organization Concrete Couch as they create a mural at Penrose Library. She was also a finalist for the first annual Peak Arts Prize in 2018. Welcome, Jamey.
Hi, Ralph. Thank you.
And Tom Shepard has been directing and producing documentary films for over 20 years. His current film, Unsettled, about LGBTQ refugees and asylum, premiered at the San Francisco International Film Festival in 2019 and has won 15 well-deserved festival prizes before broadcasting nationally this summer on PBS. Shepard's previous film, Scout's Honor, won 2 top awards at the Sundance Film Festival and broadcast nationally on POV. He also directed and produced Knocking, Whiz Kids, while also co-producing and editing The Grove. All 3 of these films broadcast nationally on PBS. Tom's films have received acclaim in dozens of publications, including reviews and features in the New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, Boston Globe, among others. Previously, Tom worked as an editor at National Public Radio for Linda Wertheimer. In 2013, he founded the Youth Documentary Academy, also known as YDA, in Colorado Springs, where he returns every summer to teach and direct the program. He's a former chairman of New Day Films and splits his time between California and Colorado. He graduated from Stanford University, where he majored in biology and film. Welcome, Tom.
So great to be with you.
Now I'm sure all of our viewers watching understand why I chose you three to be part of this, because of your esteemed background. So thank you for joining. Let's just kind of dive right into this. This discussion will have separate parts. First, we're just going to deal with the crisis part of it, of how we dealt with it. When we first got the news that we were shutting down, and that was in mid-March, I remember at the time, I had hosted a Peak Film Forum event mid-March, and that was on a Wednesday. By that Friday, we had shut down. And I'll talk a little bit about what I did from my end, but first I want to start with Emory, because you're really dealing with two entities, because it's Springs Ensemble Theater, who I'm believing was just probably preparing and starting their spring run, and then also Rocky Mountain PBS. I'm not sure basically how PBS dealt with it, but how did you handle the news from your organization's point of view?
So we had just closed a show the last weekend in February and had set up strike, and we're ready to kind of, go on to the next. We'd cast the next show, and out of nowhere, of course, this took us by surprise as much as anybody else. And so we shut down just for right away and restructured. We had a show that was supposed to open in April and didn't know what to do with that, as well as the rest of our whole season that we had planned out. And basically what we decided was to take a quick breath and take care of ourselves. And so we took all the pressure off of us and decided that it was time to take care of ourselves and our families and stay healthy. And slowly but surely, we ended up rehearsing for the show White, which was, we actually broadcast, it just ended last weekend online. You could download and watch it online. And that show was stunning and beautiful, but we basically rehearsed as much online as possible, and then did have to have some rehearsals. All of those were done with masks. If you didn't need to be in the building, you got out of the building. A lot of times it's set. One of the things I love is that we all kind of hang out there, or like if you're driving by, you stop by and watch a little rehearsal or whatever. And we just kind of stopped all of that so that the people that were doing the work were safe. And then we filmed that show. We performed it they performed it through three times, and then edited the show together. We're actually working on Jekyll and Hyde right now, and that is going to be done in a similar fashion. Except, interestingly, this director has chosen to film it more like a film. In other words, to keep bodies out of the space as much as possible, rather than having the whole cast there, just the people that are needed to shoot one scene. So we've gotten through it, and we have we're grateful that we have been able to continue to produce art and continue to produce theater, even though these are super odd times. The Rocky Mountain PBS piece is much more complicated because it's a larger organism. But basically what we decided, we've all been working from home, and that has been, it's had pluses and minuses. As somebody who works in the Springs and the main office is in Denver, I feel like I've had some bonuses because I've gotten more with Zoom. I've had more meetings with people and seen people and gotten to know people that I work with that I don't. I know that it's difficult though to collaborate, because that's the thing about theater and film, right? It's all such a collaboration. You need so many people to make those happen, and that includes not just film, but TV programming and content of any sort. And so I feel like that has been a challenge also. But we basically pivoted and were able to produce master teachers teaching kindergarten, first, second, and third graders on TV every day. We did one in the spring, a season in the spring, and actually there's a season going on right now. So from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., you can watch master teachers teaching reading skills based in STEAM backgrounds. So, 1 week is Space Week and 1 week is Animal Week and that sort of thing. So we've been able to pivot both of those organizations as best we can. Of course, I'm speaking especially for SET right now. We can't wait to just get in our space and roll up our sleeves and do more and be together. So, but that'll come.
That's a lot that you had to deal with. And we're going to talk more about the virtual play and stuff and how you put all that together, because that was obviously one of the solutions that you came up with. So Jamey, as an independent filmmaker and producer, as I am, what was going on at that time that suddenly you had to either stop or reevaluate where you were, and then talk about a little bit about those strategies that came out of that?
Sure. So luckily for me, I was in the editing phase of a long documentary film. So I just kept going and actually had more time to just hit that, which was really good. We also had a short horror film that was ready to submit to festivals basically right when COVID hit is when the festival deadlines started coming. So we really had to evaluate were these festivals still going to happen or not? And ultimately, most of them have continued in some way, either just postponing till next year or going virtual, that sort of thing. And I decided just to go for it, mostly because I figured that I wanted to support film festivals. So this was a great way to do it by just moving forward. Let's see. And then I also had plans to write some scripts. And unfortunately, one of them is a biopic that involves lots of people and a theater stage and all sorts of things that I knew were not going to happen this year. So that was a little hard to just say, okay, I'm going to do it anyway. But also that led to having more time to think about other scripts and scripts that might be possible either late this year or early next year. So smaller casts, outdoor locations, things like that, puppets. Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of where, like, luckily I was in a writing, editing, submitting phase. So I just kept going.
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about festivals and stuff and how they went virtual, because that's something that I'm involved with. But I want to toss it over to Tom, because also was an independent filmmaker, but also as director of YDA Youth Documentary Academy. Two different things that you were dealing with. I'm not sure if you were working on a film or editing a film. And of course, I know you were probably planning the summer for YDA. What did you do when the news hit you?
Right. So like Jamey, we felt incredibly fortunate. I'd been working on this film called Unsettled, about LGBTQ refugees and asylum seekers. And I had started that in the Bay Area of California in 2014. So it was a long longitudinal project. And we were editing most of 2018 and then early part of 2019. And basically we were able to premiere at the San Francisco International Festival and then have a year of a festival run. And that's just huge. I mean, obviously festivals as a place to kind of celebrate, this work. Often these documentaries, it feels like kind of, pushing a Steinway piano up the hill. And so to be able to celebrate with the subjects and the participants in the film and all the crew and all the funders. And then we worked with a group in LA called the Film Collaborative, who are basically film festival agents. And partly because the film has LGBTQ content, it got into a number of LGBT film festivals and human rights festivals, and they were able to schedule those. And so we were able to kind of raise the profile of that film for a good year before the broadcast. And we had a PBS broadcast in June. And in fact, when I heard the news,
I think we locked down in San Francisco the first week of March. I think it was the 7th or 8th of March. And we were just ready to sign papers to do a kind of a high impact community screening in New York City at the Danny Kaye Theater. And we had gotten former Ambassador Samantha Power, who was in our film, to agree to come to this, and which was no easy task. And, fortunately for us, we had not put money down, but that and about, I want to say 5 other impact screenings in DC. We were going to do a sort of a briefing screening to members of Congress. All of those were canceled within the space of, I think, 2 weeks. So like everybody else, we pivoted to online, and we ended up working with a group called Impact Media Partners. Dennis Palmieri founded that group. And Dennis had founded a thing called OV at the Independent Television Service, which is basically the virtual space on PBS. And so we quickly got connected to them, and we had gotten some grant money that we were going to use to pay for those venues and those live screenings, and basically worked with Dennis and his team, and have done a number of these kind of virtual screenings where we'll either show the film and then do a kind of Q&A very much like this, or we'll show clips of the film. The Youth Documentary Academy, which I direct here in the Springs, we were just in the middle of admissions and getting applications, and so that threw a huge wrench. And I'm happy to talk more about that later in the conversation. But bit by bit, week by week, we're kind of learning to adapt, and we were able to basically put on an online program for students. They weren't able to go out and do the field work. Certainly, like filmmaking tutorials and shooting verite filmmaking out in the field does not lend itself to social distancing, nor is it a responsible thing to do right now. So we had to pivot in a big way with YDA as well.
Yeah, we are going to talk a little bit more about that, and also as part of our how we continued on. So Emory, you did tease us a little bit about talking about what you did plan ahead and going virtual, especially with the Play White. So tell us a little bit about how that actually came about, getting permission to do that, and just saying, all right, let's pool our resources together, do a video production. How long did it take? And then take us through that whole process, and then also tell us how it all went. I mean, I hear good things from the reviews of going virtual. So did it work for you? And was that a solution going forward? So you're on.
Yeah. So we one thing that we were really concerned about when we started thinking about going virtual with our productions during this time was that one of our company members said, sometimes a recorded play is just a bad movie, and we were really worried a little bit that could come off. So we had to be careful to decide how to film, how to adjust and pivot in that way. And so that was one piece of it. The other piece is that one thing I love about artists is that, we all like to get paid to create art, right? But when push comes to shove, we want to create. And there are some very strict rules when it comes to recording your shows that are written by other people and playwrights that have worked hard for their craft. And both the publishers and the playwrights themselves have been very, very gracious to say, absolutely, keep doing art. And we've been able to adjust contracts of rights and such to be able to, produce these and we still paid the rights for them, obviously, but be able to show them virtually rather than just on stage and in person. So that was a big part of it. And then just, like researching camera equipment and finding the right person to, do kind of the switching and the, making sure that all the cameras were catching all of the things. And one of the advantages, I think, and I've through the pandemic, I've tried to use 2 words: opportunity and innovation. Those are two positive words that I think have come out of this. And there are a million, negatives, of course, that we could focus on. But if we talk about the opportunities for actors to still perform even on stage, with, and be filmed, and filmed well, not just, grandpa in the back corner with his camcorder. But in addition to that, the opportunity to kind of take a break and analyze a lot of things as far as like how we create theater, what our season looks like, when our season starts, how we choose shows. We were able to kind of take a break and do all that. So when it came down to that, we had a learning curve, but as far as figuring out cameras and where to get them and which ones were right and editing tools and things like that, but we persisted because we're stubborn and creative, and so that's what we did there.
So I'm going to piggyback upon your opportunity and innovation.
Yeah.
Over to Jamey. And so how did you use this as an opportunity to move forward?
Yeah, so I guess one idea that I've been kind of obsessed a little bit with for a while is projecting films, like art films. I've pitched multiple times art film projects, and I kind of saw this as an opportunity to just make that happen. So we're halfway through that. So I decided, I found out my brother works at a church and they were doing drive-in church, and they'd gotten an FM transmitter so that they could do drive-in church. So it would be like a drive-in movie, but church. And I was like, I think that's what I need for this projector idea. So so I went ahead and got the FM transmitter, which actually we haven't gotten the projection thing going yet, but I do plan to try and do some pop-up films, and also help out other filmmakers like Ralph if they want to do kind of drive-in premieres during this time. But we were able to use it. My boyfriend, Travis, is one half of the band Spur. So we thought it would also work for music. And we've done one or two kind of pop-up shows where they're performing outside and people can tune in on the radio and listen. And that's been super fun. And hopefully we'll have more of those, especially as it gets colder and people aren't going to want to, shiver through a show. So yeah, that's kind of our innovative plan for still continuing to make films and music and share them with people.
Yeah, I know that I was in touch with you, Jamey, about doing a possible outdoor event at Cottonwood. I don't know if all of you know this, but so Peak Film Forum is a part of the Independent Film Society of Colorado, which is IFSOC, and that's our nonprofit host. And our office is at Cottonwood Center for the Arts. So, of course, a lot of our events takes place at Cottonwood, but everything got canceled. Also, we do events at Ivy Wild School with Ivy Wild Events. All of our events were canceled. So we were trying to come up with different ways to move forward. And Jamey and I have been talking about doing stuff. And of course, we had gotten permission to do things outside of Cottonwood. John Corey is the executive director there, is very open once we had a COVID plan in place for reopening the gallery and what we could and couldn't do in the theater and what we could and couldn't do out in the parking lot, that type of thing. So yes, and in the future, we still want to do something like that, just because it's been a dream of yours. And as we move forward with this discussion, you brought this up about innovation, Emory. It's like a lot of the things that we're coming up with now are like really great ideas to move forward to even after all of this is over with.
Yeah.
But I want to direct this back down to Tom and talk to, it's like I have the Brady Bunch here with the screen. I'm going to talk to Tom. And now, where are you in the planning as far as now it's beginning of summer, YDA you have to decide what to do with it. How did you move forward? And I know there's some really good things that we could talk about, because there were some film festivals too that happened over the summer that brought attention to a lot of the films from last year. So boom, you're on.
Well, one thing I would say is that we leaned on the youth, we leaned on the students in our program, and they had, stopped going to school in mid to late March. And so when we matriculated our program in early June, they had already kind of gotten their heads around this technology way more so than our faculty. And so, and I guess I would just say that, everybody was really just hungry to engage. And I think, feeling sort of isolated and being able to, I will say about these formats is that there is sometimes a real intimacy. And I found that some students that are maybe a little more shy typically in this medium, when they start to open up and feel safe, have stepped forward. And it ended up being a really valuable summer, I think, for all of us. I mean, and normally in the Youth Documentary Academy, we spend about 2 weeks doing sort of story workshopping. We often do that in small groups, facilitated by some of our mentor filmmakers. And then it's usually 2 weeks out in the field, shooting like crazy, filming, and then 2 to 3 weeks in the edit room. And so we had to basically excise those second 2 components. But what we were able to do is drill more deeply into the story pieces. And to me, that's what's sort of the most magical thing about YDA, is that, the students, when they come in, they really see themselves as access points to story. So they're maybe taking something that was previously taboo or shameful in their own lives and kind of working through those tangles. And we were able to, I think, get to a level in that workshopping that I don't think had ever been so intimate before. So I'm thankful for that. And Pikes Peak Community College, which is our facility sponsor, located a different space. So once a week, we were able to go to a kind of a theater style space at the Rampart Range campus, very, very large. We're all like 10 feet apart with our masks on, and we were able to watch a lot of work. And I guess that's the other thing, is that in some ways this technology can be an equalizer. So we were able to have students who are sort of far flung around the country now, who have gone off to school, who weren't in Colorado Springs, alumni of our program, be able to, we were able to show their films and then have them come and speak via Zoom and sometimes live on Fridays. So I don't think the level of connectivity did not diminish. If anything, I think it strengthened. And that was interesting for us as instructors to see, okay, what can we take from this to, kind of keep that intimate space when we get back to the classroom in the studio.
I had to remember to unmute myself. Sorry. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. We had we meaning Independent Film Society, had a very interesting summer. Most of it was just planning and kind of figuring out what we were going to do. And one of the things that we're doing right now is we're kind of taking advantage of the fact that we can do something in our small theater at Cottonwood. So we're going to, every year we do 3 nights of horror, which this would be our 5th year. Well, we really can't do it as we did it in the past. So we're doing 2 nights and we're showing some horror films at Cottonwood. And we're hoping that we do get somebody to come. I think we can have as many as 20 people in our small theater. One of the things that I had encountered over the summer was keeping track of watching how theaters across the country were operating, and theaters did open up. And although I didn't attend, I had asked several friends who had gone to the theater, mainly to see some of the bigger features that did come out. Well, I think Tenet was the big one that came out. And basically they said that they were practically the only ones in the theater. So what did that mean? It meant that, yes, theaters open, but people still weren't going. So I think that going this virtual direction was probably the best thing that we all, decided to do. Jamey, you had mentioned that the early film festivals that you were looking at, they had canceled, mainly because they didn't have time to do anything. I think what was great was that film festivals did move forward very quickly and said, we're going to have to do something to keep going and go virtual. We were planning on doing Indie Spirit Film Festival this October. It would have been a comeback after 5 years. We decided a virtual festival was not a good way to come back. So we postponed. And Film Freeway gave us the advantage of extending it to next fall. So they were really very gracious to us. And of course, I'm sure they were doing that for a lot of other film festivals because they know that we were all kind of in a similar situation. But I really, really commended all the film festivals that went ahead and did virtual events. We were fortunate this year that we were able to do Colorado Short Circuit Film Festival in February. So we were able to kick off the year and had a successful festival before COVID hit. We're going to do that festival as a virtual festival in March next year, just because I do not think that the situation is going to change by the spring. So we're just going to kind of do that ahead anyway. Plus, it gives us the opportunity to do virtual events because as I mentioned earlier, why wouldn't we try to do that in the future to complement some of the events that we already do? There's a section I want to talk about now. I'm going to call it tattling on our friends, meaning that we all have filmmaker friends or organizations that we know of that have also survived during the during this shutdown. And I'm not saying tattling by saying something that isn't public. I mean, if it's on social media, you can talk about it. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and Tom, you have an affiliation with Women's Film, is they really moved forward. There was a little bit of a break in the beginning of summer, but then they moved forward to do virtual events and then outdoor drive-up theater events, and then went ahead and decided to do Women's Film this year as a virtual film festival. I really think that's amazing. They just really just said, you know what, let's just take advantage of this stuff. And it's not like in the past people haven't done virtual events before, but really having to depend upon it was something new and unique to all of us. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit, because I know you have some affiliation with some of the folks at Women's Film, and that maybe that process that they had to go through.
Sure. I mean, I can't speak for, Linda Broker and the team there, but I have had conversations with them as they started strategizing around the festival. And to my knowledge, they didn't lose a single sponsor in Colorado Springs for their festival. And they're thinking really creatively about, okay, how can we engage audiences in these formats? How can we do live events? I know Kathy Stoltz is going to be positioned over at Ivy Wild, mixing margaritas, and they're going to be kind of live streaming that, and then being able to, move to a filmmaker Q&A. And so I've been really impressed with, I think, like everybody in this situation, you have to be sort of Buddhist about all of this and not be, too attached to all the things that, that we know, that we're familiar with, that we love. And certainly with a festival like Rocky Mountain Women's Film Festival, which has been going on for over 30 years, people are really used to a certain kind of weekend of screening. So I hats off to all of them, to Karen Waldorf and Linda and Kathy and the whole board. And in terms of, I definitely feel for a lot of my friends and colleagues in the field who finish their films a year later than, say, Jamey's project or my film, and who really rely on, these festivals and also kind of the live experience of being able to sort of get your film on the radar and connect with agents and connect with the audience and, start to sort of build your audience, even find your audience. So much of that happens in festivals. And I think maybe for me that might be one of the bigger challenges. How can you create an environment where I think people just naturally are feeling a little bit fatigued in our there's so many of them every day. How can you take of this and still make it very fresh and alive? So I think many festivals are doing a great job trying to do that.
I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I don't know if anybody else is, and I'm hoping that maybe it's not coming from my end. But anyway, do I sound clear to you guys?
You sound clear to me. I hope it's not is it my microphone, I wonder?
I think it is you, Tom. I'm getting a little bit. Can you mute for a second and then see what happens? Yeah. So more about tattling on our friends. So I'm going to talk about some other filmmakers in town, independent filmmakers. Things did not stop. People still made films, and even those who even made somewhat bigger short films, they basically got the protocols from what the unions were coming up with in Hollywood, and they just said, okay, we're going to follow these protocols, and we're going to make sure that everybody wears masks on set, and everybody is going to have their temperature taken, and everybody's going to be tracked to know where they're going. But films did continue, and so I was very proud to know that our independent film community still went forward. In fact, Jamey, you made 1 or 2 films this summer, didn't you? And then you also entered them into festivals and had a following. So tell me a little bit about you moving forward as an independent creative person and saying, all right, let me, and one of the films that you made was about COVID.
Yeah, so as I was submitting our horror film, I stumbled across a virtual quarantine themed film festival, basically kind of one of those like make a film that's 3 minutes or under, with this deadline a few weeks out. And really I believe that one, it had to in some way relate to the pandemic. And the only other rule was you couldn't leave your home because all of the world was on lockdown at that point. So my boyfriend Travis and I went ahead and created a quarantine themed film, and we submitted it to that festival. And then after that, discovered lots of other ones. Probably the most fun was the Quarantine Film Challenge that the Film Consortium of San Diego had going on, and it showed online on their platform and actually won Audience Choice that week, which was pretty neat. So we created that film, and then later, once things started opening back up and we kind of had these mask protocols and kind of were starting to figure out how to continue, I had earlier in the year agreed to document Mike Pock, who's a local photographer who's creating a film, he's creating a photo project for the Colorado Springs sesquicentennial. Yay, got that out. And so I had agreed to make a short documentary about his process and some of the photos that he chose. He's basically recreating some of our old historic photos. And so we were able to start that sort of as things started opening back up. It's been kind of interesting because it's like, everywhere you go, you have a mask, and I'm mostly sticking to outside shoots just because I feel more comfortable. So it's definitely been interesting to film out in the world in this time, I would say. And I'm still kind of getting my bearing.
Yeah, as I said, I was really happy to see that a lot of filmmakers were still continuing forward. As you know, Peak Film Forum is a monthly event, and it's a live event where everybody gathers together to show their short films and also network. Well, we couldn't do the networking part of it, but I decided to continue to show films online through our Facebook pages, IFSOC and Peak Film Forum. And Jamey, we did show your pandemic-based film. In fact, we just launched today for the October Show Us Your Short. So there's a film right now that's on the pages, and we'll show a film for the next 4 or 5 days and still keeping filmmakers going. And so basically, instead of the Q&A being live, it's just basically on Facebook until we can move forward, and it has caused us to kind of move into different directions. And I think even eventually when we go back to having live events, I probably will still do something like this online just because it engages people more. One of the things I was really happy about is that we were able to survive because of social media, because people were looking for things to do and watch and whatnot. And so we were able to actually keep our audience, and people are still asking about us. We have new filmmakers that came into town. They found me and I met with them, and I've been showing their films. So they are part of the group, and they can't wait to meet everybody eventually when we move forward. But let's go ahead and continue the conversation about moving forward. And so then, Emory, back to you, because you did have a successful virtual event, but you're also planning the future. I know he's right above you, Jamey. Talk about the next play that's happening, and is it going more smoothly for you because you'd already tested doing white? Or tell us a little bit about this next process and moving forward.
So the next show is Jekyll and Hyde, directed by Taylor Gaiman, and he's actually a filmmaker himself. A fun story: the film festival you talked about in February. Yep. Ralph,
yes,
I
you were
in one of those movies, and I was actually also performing on stage. So I was sort of in two locations at one time performing, which was kind of fun. But anyway, so he, as a filmmaker, he's approaching this play production very much like a filmmaker, and I think I mentioned earlier the differences in the two directors, and partly one of the great things about Set is that we we take the producers and the directors and that team, and we put together the show the way we want. And there are some constraints and things that we use and ways that we like to do things as a company. But when it comes to how to get the job done, a lot of that is up to the people involved in that project. And so one thing that I think is really cool that will make Jekyll and Hyde a really fun production, to go back real fast, White, for anyone that didn't get to see it, was done just like a show with a stage and an audience. We were able to have about 5 or 6 audience members in the house as really part of the characters, because White was a comedy, so we needed some laughter and things like that. And so we had a few live bodies in there just to give the actors some reaction. This one will be opposite. In fact, the crew and the design team has painted all 4 walls of our space. For anybody that hasn't had the opportunity to come and see anything at Springs Ensemble Theater, we have a black box theater, and that is basically 4 black walls, a black ceiling, and a black floor. And that space is about 25 by 25 and a half, 26. I might have those dimensions wrong. I'm sure somebody from set is watching me and shaking their head, but not a big space. And we've moved the audience around. Well, for Jekyll and Hyde, actually, the filming is going to be from the middle of the space, and all 4 walls have been painted by the designers in really creative, beautiful black and white artwork that will then be the backdrops for the different locations and different scenes. So in that realm, I tend to think that if we, we're in lockdown for years and years, and by no means anybody hear me say that I hope, I feel like we keep creating new tricks and keep doing new things. I also think that when you're in, and this is probably the same for film, although I've done very little film and certainly have never created one myself, that when you're with a cast or a crew or a production crew, you've entered an agreement to keep each other safe, right? So it's about not exposing yourself and about keeping your castmates and your crew safe, and about really it's in my mind, it's a promise that you are going to, follow all of the rules and the mandates and the instructions from health officials to walk in a way that is safe and healthy, so that you can come together and do that art and be together doing that. So I hope I answered the question for you. Okay,
yes, good. You did. And then back to Tom, you can unmute. So moving forward with YDA, things that you learned this summer and, using those to move forward into next year. And also with your own personal work and Unsettled, I know some good things I just read some stuff on Facebook, some good stuff is happening there. So tell us where you are with both of those.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm going to do a quick sound
I
check.
can.
I changed mics. Can you hear me okay? And Ralph, if you want to mute too, maybe we'll optimize the chances of, sorry about the feedback earlier. So with Unsettled, we're super grateful now for public television. Both because it's the most accessible form of kind of broadcast media in the US in terms of reaching, kind of many different demographics, but also right now, being a primary format in terms of being able to engage an audience. And so we had a broadcast of the film Unsettled at the end of June, and just found out recently that it's going to be broadcasting on public television again on November 1st, just 2 days before the presidential election. And so we're really excited about that, and we're working with our kind of impact team to try and engage younger citizens, and in particular law school students who might work in kind of asylum and refugee clinics where they're studying immigration law, and they know that this broadcast is going to happen, and providing some engagement materials for them. So that feels good, and just in terms of being able to participate in the discourse around an important issue that certainly this administration has taken a stand and really in some ways changed the course of history around the sort of asylum and immigration programs and laws in our country. So super excited about that. And then in terms of the Youth Documentary Academy, we're not able to do a big premiere. We of course love every year. We either do it at the Fine Arts Center or at Colorado College. And it's such a, just amazing experience to watch these young filmmakers who, as I said before, had, really in some ways taken something very, very personal and translated that into something accessible to a very large audience. And while that's super scary to show it to an audience, it's also incredibly empowering. And we see, that's something that I deeply, deeply miss, and I'm going to be very sad about, is that at least for the time being, we're not going to be able to witness our young people stand on a stage and grab a microphone and really almost become ambassadors for the films that they've made. But our team is thinking very carefully about how we can put on a kind of online, we're talking about a sort of a Youth Media Matters conference that will engage audiences, particularly in Southern Colorado, be able to show the films, but have enough venues that our students can still be able to represent those films. So yeah.
That's terrific. It's good to hear that that's going to happen. I was just thinking, Tom, that as I move forward and we're going to do Short Circuit as a virtual festival, it's sad that I won't have any new films from YDA for that, because we've always been able to show YDA films, although I'm sure we could look back in the archives and there might be something that we might be able to look at from the first year. There were some excellent films that were produced that very, very first year.
And that's great. And also, I'm just sort of thinking out loud here, Ralph, but we just finished editing season 2 of our public TV series, Our Time, which is in partnership, Emory, with Rocky Mountain PBS. And we're working very closely with Kate Perdoni on that. And it makes me wonder, we have some films from recent years, but we've also curated some films from the early years. And there were several of our students this summer that we were able to kind of train remotely, and they worked on their own kind of iPhones and cameras at home. And a couple of them are making films about what it's been like to endure the COVID pandemic through their eyes, through a young person's experience and lens. And so we're hoping that those films might get done in time to be eligible for both Our Time and possibly Short Circuit. That was one of the most exciting things last I guess it was really a week before the pandemic started, was the Short Circuit Film Festival.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we were able to do that. And I'm already looking at some shorts that will probably be eligible for Short Circuit that are dealing with pandemic, both documentary and narrative, including Jamey's film, which I'm so glad that we were able to show us your shorts, but virtually. Jamey, back to you to wrap things up. So, as an independent filmmaker, how are you progressing moving forward? Looking forward to the fall here, into the winter, or, how are you planning on moving forward creatively?
Yeah, so I guess really the biggest thing is to just keep moving forward. For me, it's just go to my desk every single day and edit or write, or a lot of film work. There's a lot of pre-production work that can be done remotely, obviously. So I'm still editing the documentary. Hopefully it'll be done by the end of this year. And then I'm hoping to move forward with one of my scripts as best we can next year with, whichever one seems the most feasible based on what's happening at the time, I suppose. So I guess my strategy is just keep doing the work, keep putting in the time, keep, being innovative. Hopefully we get the pop-up projection thing going this fall, winter. That'll be a lot of fun. So.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing that happen too. I think you had mentioned too that this summer was a great time to just kind of do some writing, and then you were finishing the editing. I think we were all either had projects, which was kind of nice that we were finishing. I'm finishing up a short film called Knockout, and it was interesting where I was talking to a lot of filmmakers who were like, well, I don't know about virtual film festivals. It's all about being there and being live. And I said, yeah, I totally understand that, but you have to support these film festivals so that they can keep going, you know? So, and I said, I have no problem with it, because I would love to see my film be in any film festival. And if it's in a place where I maybe can't attend, it will still happen. And I will feel better about it knowing that, okay, it's a virtual event anyway, and they will go out of their way to try to include all the filmmakers as best as possible. So I think really to word out to any filmmakers who are watching this, please still go forward and include yourself in any of the film festivals that are really trying desperately to continue, because this is how we support each other. Interestingly enough, all the four of us together, I kind of thought we all kind of intermixed at different points, but tonight really proved how we cross over in so many different ways as filmmakers and as organizations. You know, I mean, with my organization and YDA, we've been working together for the past 7 years, and Rocky Mountain PBS and YDA working together to get that out. And of course, Peak Film Forum would not exist if it were not for Jamey Hastings, because she created it and brought me on board as a co-founder. So I always thank her that we exist, because it was really her idea and her baby. So it's interesting how we all have been working together towards similar goals, and we still have to. And I think that's really great that, you know, we can join together, and hopefully in the future, as these events continue, we can add more and more people. I know there were more people I wanted to be part of this discussion, but we just couldn't add them in at the last minute. But this discussion could probably go on and on and on. But to wrap things up, I just want to go and talk about the future again, about maybe like private projects and things that we all are secretly planning on. I have a few. Or if we want to tattle on some of our friends, this is a good opportunity. Emory, you had mentioned working with Taylor as directing, but he's also became a filmmaker. I know that he just decided recently to go to film school.
Yeah, he did. I wasn't going to say that. I didn't know how private it was, but if you know it, yeah. So it's a great opportunity and time for him to move on and do new and exciting things. And I think, I really think we need to continue to, as artists, as humans, continue to move on no matter what this looks like. Because that's the thing. We don't know what we don't know, right? We don't know what the spring will look like. And we don't even know, you know, what the winter and all of that goes. And, you know, schools are open this week and they're virtual next week. And it's really about just kind of going with the flow and seizing opportunities. And I feel like as we move forward, I've been taking some time to, at first I took a break, which was lovely, having done 2 shows in a row, and then being able to focus on work, and actually moved during the pandemic, but that's like an entirely different conversation. And I think that as we move on, we're going to continue to innovate, to create new things, to have new ideas, because, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. So when we are able to meet together, we'll have so many new ideas and new things that wouldn't have happened because of this. I'm taking the time to try to read some scripts when I have a little more time and I'm not running to rehearsal and things like that. And so one step at a time. And back to the little, you know, Jamey mentioned the FM transmitter. Like, I hope this brings drive-in movies back, because how wonderful are those? I mean, there's just nothing like sitting in your car with the popcorn and I've lived here long enough. I remember when the Walmart on Platt was a drive-in, you know, and like that's where I saw Beetlejuice for the first time, Crocodile Dundee, and I hope that this time has showed us some of the things that were great and are great and can be great again, even from our past. So I am all about your drive-ins, Jamey. That's super exciting. I do not like to be cold, but I will put on an extra big coat and come watch and maybe a space heater, possibly a heater. Like stay warm.
And I think you're right, Emory. I think that all these things that we've kind of were forced to do this year are probably going to go forth and move on, because I think it also added a sense of community in coming up with these things.
Yeah, if not to use
Yep,
more
go ahead.
share of time, but I do think that's true, because we at PBS we do events where we do screenings of some of our things, and we had a screening that we used actually the same platform for, and we were able to have, I think it was close to, it was over 400 people. I think it was 800 people watch this new content and screening all at the same time. And that kind of coordination would take events in 6 cities and that sort of thing, and then you wouldn't have all the experts. And so I really think that there are some great opportunities. And even though I am all for the drive-in movies coming back, like from yesterday, I also think that the ability to communicate virtually and share art on a much broader spectrum is really fantastic.
Yeah, I think you're right. And then basically then also to include Jamey and Tom on this, you're not afraid of virtual events. You're not afraid of having your films shown virtually or entering festivals that are only virtual, correct? You could go off mute and talk. It's okay. We'll go ahead and see how this works. I'm Tom. I think you're okay. So if we all go on mute for a little bit, let's see if this works. Yeah,
Okay.
but virtual isn't a scary thing for filmmakers anymore, is it? Tom?
No, I think, as I was saying before, increasingly too, I think people are being really, really creative about the ways that you can, have a screening and then engage in different kinds of conversation. And, just to echo something that Emory said a little bit earlier, which is, this sort of ethic of care. I mean, everything that we do in documentary is about relationships, and it's about sort of interdependence, right? Like the documentary film director is completely dependent on their participants and subjects for telling the story. And the subjects are really, reliant on the documentary filmmaker to treat that material very sensitively and very fairly. And so if there's anything I've learned is, this, being more patient, being more forgiving. My sister is the art teacher over at Steele and elementary school in District 11, and I'm seeing what those folks are going through every day. They're having to pivot literally, if not by the day, by the hour sometimes. And so I just think having some, ethic of generosity and kindness as we move forward. I mean, that's really something that art can powerfully facilitate, whether it's, theater or film. And so, it's certainly been helpful for me to slow down and think about some of those things.
Well, I certainly wanted tonight to be a representation of how we all, as artists and organizations, move forward, so that it wasn't all doom and gloom. I wanted people to understand that you can't stop art, no matter what. We're going to keep finding a way to keep going, and I think that's what we all have done. And I really am so glad that things continue no matter what. I'm going to leave it as a positive, because none of us really know what's going to happen in the future. But I did get one comment, and it was for Emory. Jonathan said, "White was awesome."
Thank you. I know the cast and crew really appreciate people that watched it. And
There it is.
At set, we're a big Jonathan fan, so.
There you go. And also, while we were talking, I had a message that came across my screen. One of my potential judges, who's been judging Short Circuit for the past 4 years, said, "Whether it's virtual or live, you have me on board. I will do whatever it takes to make it happen." So I'm just loving that everybody's coming together and just saying, yes, the future is ours at this point. So whatever we make of it, we're just going to keep going. So I'm very, very happy with that. Any final comments, Jamey? Maybe in some of the film festivals that you've even attended this summer, you're still looking forward to just doing the virtual stuff ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, I attended the Denver Animation Show, I believe it was called, virtually, and we streamed it on our TV in the living room, lights out, and I thought it was fantastic. It was kind of being in our little mini movie theater. So I think it's a great opportunity. And I don't know that I would have driven to Denver to that show on whatever night it was, and I think that's true. Now I could attend a festival anywhere, and I think
it's true.
Really cool. I think that's really cool. So I think it does, like Emory was saying, it just offers opportunities that I think we're still discovering even.
Yeah. So I think our time is just about up. I think Jonathan's going to probably jump in here at any minute and probably shut us all up. But Emory, did you have one more thing you wanted to say?
Yeah, as somebody who is more representative of live theater, it's harder to do those things virtually, but we are trying. But I'm hoping and asking that when it is safe, people come back, or we'll still be doing the things. And I think we all are looking forward to that time of sitting in the dark and being told a story, whether it's in a movie theater or in a stage theater. Netflix is great, and watching things on streaming programs are fantastic. But there's something about being told that story together in the dark with a group of strangers that just can't be replicated. So I just hope when it's safe again, which I very much hope is soon, that that we'll see you back in all of the venues across the state, country, and world to watch live performances and film, because you can actually eat popcorn during a film, but we frown on it in the theater because it's loud.
What a great way to end the discussion. Thank you, Emory. Thank you, Jamey. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks for having us, Ralph.
You're welcome, everybody.
One of the most challenging parts of ending these conversations is for me going from a listener and a viewer and engaging with all this wonderful content that is being produced to have to come back on and shepherd us away. We could go on for so much longer. And I want to thank you all for your time this evening and the really thoughtful comments, and just, despite all the issues that have been created with all of this, the ways of innovation and keep on keeping on has been really impressive to me. So thank you all again for your time this evening. Our next community conversation is entitled Yes and the Current Creativity and Dreams of the Springs Theatrical Community. That will be Friday night with moderator Scott Levy from the Fine Arts Center. That'll be Friday night at 6 p.m. So we hope that you can join us for that. In the meantime, I hope you'll explore all 8 community conversations and find out how to get involved in Arts Month. That's at artsoctober.com is the best place to find all the details for all of those. So thank you again for joining us this evening. And remember, as part of Arts Month, remember to have at least one new cultural experience, virtual or in person this year with 2020, with family or friends this October.